Hello and welcome back to Eric Likes Animals podcast. I'm your host, Eric Mahan, and I'm here to chat with you guys today about some environmental news stories and, of course, some animals. So, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. And, of course, if you are a returning listener, welcome back. And let's get started with some environmental news stories. So, I'm giving you sort of a bonus story, but not really. Let me explain. All right. So, nominations are now officially open for the Blue Loops or Bloops. I think it's Blue Loops is how you pronounce it. A 50 zoo and aquarium influencers list of 2023. This is their second year in a row doing this and is a way to recognize individuals who are making an impact in the zoo community to the public. And this is all around the world. So this isn't just in one country. So they're looking at it from everywhere. So if you have anyone in mind that you want to nominate, for example, I don't know, a certain zookeeper that just happens to have a podcast as well. But whoever you want to nominate, you can. So I will have a link down below in the episode footers till the nomination window closes for the zoo and aquarium influencer. Also, there's a couple other categories to choose from in case you have other influencers in mind, like theme park, museum, immersive exhibits, just to name a few. So, name a person, make sure you choose the right category for them, and nominate whoever you want. But just so you guys know, a really cool thing going on, and a good way for you to recognize anybody that you think should be recognized across the zoo, museum, whatever field. Now, moving on to the real environmental news. So, first up, there's this article where scientists discovered that before a male spider mite copulates with a female, and copulate is just a fancy word for sex, they will undress the female spider mites by pulling off their skin. Very sexy, and is a behavior not seen in any other species before. So, when the male spider mites are ready to mate, they strip the skin off the maturing female as part of a kind of freaky mating ritual. Scientists in Austria uncovered this creepy act for the first time while studying spider mites. They're a dust speck sized relative of arachnids, so spiders and scorpions. The researchers found that the males would guard the females to ensure other males won't, well, take his girl and get the pleasure of ripping off her skin to breed with her. Spider mites also typically reach sexual maturity, just so you know, within 10 days of age, so very fast growing, and they will wait until their potential mates begin molting their exoskeletons. The males will guard the females for hours and will be able to be recognized when the premature females start molting because their kind of outer skin turns silvery as the air lodges between its old skin and its new skin. And this is when things normally get weird, is when that skin starts separating. Because the sooner the skin comes off, the sooner the female is ready for mating. So males just don't feel like waiting, and they will then use their mouth and basically rip the skin off of the female, which doesn't hurt her. It's more of an impatient thing than anything, just so he can start breeding. Researchers also noted in this article that at times males would use their forelegs to drum against the female. A thought for the reason of this is perhaps it's to trigger them to begin the molting process earlier. But for whatever reason, males, no matter what species they are, apparently don't seem to like to wait. Next up, we talk a lot in the past about the United Kingdom and just all their recent successes in strategies in rewilding their countryside. So I figure, why don't we look at another country that just recently had an article out and its attempts on rewilding its countryside. And the country I want to talk about is Spain, because they are also doing this and they have some unique animals they're trying to bring back into the wilderness that's a little different than what the UK is doing. So, probably the weirdest one of all is the Przewalski horse, which is one of the oldest horse species and is considered one of the last true wild horse species ever, is being brought back to Spain. In a forested plateau in the highlands of eastern Spain, a group of Przewalski horses, about 10 animals altogether, are living in this rugged mountain chain about a 2 hour drive from Madrid, and they came from a reserve in France in May. Now, these horses are up there and they're being introduced to about a 850,000 hectare landscape. So, getting them ready to be released into the wild. There's river canyons, pine, oak, juniper forests, farmlands, and all this sort of just crazy, beautiful rewilding Spain. A 20-year initiative to return one of Europe's least populated areas to a wilder state. So, not too many humans are living in this area to begin with, anyway. After acclimating in a 17 hectare enclosure, the horses will then be released in September, which could make this little known corner of Spain the second place in all of Europe after Chernobyl where Przewalski horses roam free. And bonus, this will be the first European population of Przewalski horse that don't live in a nuclear disaster site. So win-win. And, probably great that they don't have to worry about nuclear radiation. But funny enough, a lot of the animals that live in Chernobyl are actually doing quite well, including Przewalski horse. But let's focus back into Spain, because it's not just Przewalski horses that are coming back. Thanks to low levels of human disturbance, like I said, also allowed the return of many other animals already. For example, red deer, large populations of Egyptian vultures, as well as black vultures and Iberian lynx have also started to return to this land. Other creatures like insects have also started returning. Good initiatives like stopping the spray of chemicals have greatly increased the dung beetle population. Dung beetles are extremely important because, well, they roll poop everywhere, which helps give nutrients back to the soil. And yes, there are dung beetles outside of Africa. In fact, there's dung beetles all over the place, including here in the States. I see dung beetles all the time in the summertime. They love ocelot poop for some reason. So I see them all the time rolling their little turds all over the place. Way to go, little dung beetles, because you are creating a healthy environment. Although, in the end, I think the Przewalski horse is just going to be super happy to call a place home that is in a site of a radioactive nuclear disaster. Just saying. And then finally, an article describing the discovery of an octopus nursery just recently was posted. Now, they suspected that there was a nursery here because in 2013, scientists found octopuses doing something unusual down in the coast of Costa Rica. Now, most octopuses are known to be solitary animals, but females were gathering at this spot to brood their eggs near a low temperature hydrothermal vent. But at the time, scientists didn't see any octopus babies, which led them to theorize that the warm water and limited oxygen at the vent wasn't actually allowing the eggs to develop fully. So they just theorized that these octopuses were being dumb and gathering around a vent that was actually making it harder to produce babies. But that was just a theory. Because 10 years later, in June 2023, researchers then went back with a remotely operated vehicle into the deep sea to search for brooding octopuses because they wanted to make sure. They saw the eggs and all that, but they were like, well, the ocean floor goes a little deeper. Maybe we should send a remote vehicle down there just to be sure. And they got a pretty big surprise because what they found, so-called octopus nursery. Several days later, the researchers discovered actually a second octopus nursery. So not just one, but two octopus nurseries. This one about 30 nautical miles away from the original, and another low temperature hydrothermal vent. Together, these two locations are two of only three known deep sea octopus nurseries in the world. The third one, by the way, is off the coast of California. Now, scientists believe the brooding octopus found at the warm water flow of the hydrothermal vent during this year's expedition might be a new and yet to be identified species of deep sea octopus. So not only were they finding octopus nurseries, they were also possibly finding a brand new species of octopus. The researchers also saw at least 4 other species of octopus there as well, yet to be identified. Now, the theory by why these octopuses are choosing this area is, well, the warm rocks. It keeps them nice and warm, and they prefer to being cold when they're brooding their eggs. But that's just a theory. But no matter why they chose the hydrothermal vents, let's just admit it's pretty awesome that there are such things as octopus nurseries out there. And that is your environmental news. Okay, now moving on to today's creature feature, I have decided to tell you guys all about one of the most dangerous and most squishy creatures out there, and that is the greater blue ringed octopus. Yep, must be an octopus theme. Found an octopus nursery news thing, and I also decided on talking about a really cool octopus species itself. Who knows? Anyway, the greater blue ringed octopus is one of several species of blue ringed octopus. All are thought to be venomous, and for their size, they are one of the most deadly of all cephalopods, group that the octopus are in. It is said that the venom of the octopus could kill 26 adults in just a few minutes. There is no anti-venom or treatment. Fortunately, these octopus, however, do not attack humans. Injury typically occurs because people are being dumb and they're picking it up and trying to play with it, or they're stepping on it. So no matter what, no touchy, and you'll be fine. They are found in northern Australia, of course, as well as Japan, including Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Indonesia, and as far west as Sri Lanka. Now, the greater blue ringed octopus are bottom dwellers, inhabiting sandy and kind of silty areas in the shallow coral reefs, tide pools, and clumps of algae at depths of about 0 to 20 meters or about 0 to 66 feet. They hide in rock crevices, inside empty shells, and in discarded bottles. And even if the bottles are closed, they'll figure out how to open it. Because octopuses, in general, are extremely intelligent animals. In aquariums, they give them a wide variety of puzzle feeders. Now, what a puzzle feeder is well, the name kind of gives it away. It is a puzzle that makes the animals have to manipulate or solve to be able to get to their food, which helps stimulate them like they would when they were hunting food in the wild. Now, one such device for octopus is putting the food in a jar with a lid tightly turned on, because they are smart enough to actually be able to undo the lid and get to the yummy snacks inside. Octopus are also one of the smartest and trickiest aquarium animals people have to deal with a lot of the time. They need to make sure everything is very secure and no squeeze through holes, because if an octopus can squeeze out of its tank, it will. And it will eat all of his yummy neighbor friends. Yep, they will crawl out of the water, get everywhere, and eat a fish buffet or whatever else is considered their neighbor. They'll try and eat it. Now, going back to the blue ringed octopus, as for its size, the adults are usually less than about 5 centimeters or about 1.97 inches long, and with arms, they're about 7 centimeters, 2.8 inches when extended. So they're not very big. And they can weigh anywhere from 10 to 100 grams. Average, however, is about 55 grams or 0.35 to 3.5 ounces, with an average of 1.9 ounces. Females, however, are normally slightly bigger than the males, and at the most, they tend to live about 2 to 3 years, but a lot of times they'll only live for about a year. Now, let's describe them. The greater blue ring octopus have a soft sac-like body and 8 sucker-covered arms. Their body background color at rest is usually tan to dark yellow or occasionally gray. Up to 25 faint blue rings as large as about 8 millimeters or 0.3 inches in diameter cover their dorsal, their mantle, their arms, all over themselves. And they'll be dim, but if scared, they will brighten up. Because at the center of each ring is usually a dark brown color, but each ring has a dark blurred edge containing some of these color changing cells. And like I said, when the animal is stressed, that faint blue ring changes to a brilliant iridescent blue, and some would even say that it looks like it glows, like Rudolph's nose. Which is kind of the opposite of what most octopus would do with those cells. Is when they're scared, they would change color to match different structures or different colors of the ocean floor, turn their skin rough to smooth to try and hide from the predator that is freaking them out. But I guess when you're as venomous as this little guy, you don't need to hide. And in fact, they're doing exactly what poison dart frogs and a lot of animals do, which is those rings are a warning sign that if you continue to mess with me, I'll make you regret it. But they still don't want to waste the venom, so they still have the ability to match their surroundings. And they even have their specialized skin to make rough or smooth to match the rocks and its habitat. So at first, they really do try and blend in, but they have the blue rings there just to kind of let whatever's messing it know that if it keeps messing with it, it is possibly going to get in a lot of pain. Also, besides all the different camouflage, they normally do hide in crevices throughout the day and night just to make sure they don't accidentally run into potential predators or, I guess, get stepped on by people either. Looking at its size, by the way, it is kind of shocking how small it is that it would still be considered one of the most venomous creatures on Earth. Maybe not number one, but it's definitely in the top 10 of probably most venomous creatures on this planet. And yet, the blue ringed octopus still has predators. These predators include things like moray eels, whales, seals, fish, birds, and other octopus, including their own species. So they will hide away during the day in the hot little crevices because, well, apparently they can still get eaten, even though I would definitely not want to mess with them. Of course, they also eat. They're also predators. Like I said, there's a couple blue ringed octopus that would probably snack on each other. So the blue ringed octopus are octopus eaters themselves if they get really hungry, but for the most part, they eat small crabs, hermit crabs, shrimp, and occasionally small fishes. For the most part, they're crab eaters. They're also ambush predators, which means that they usually hide somewhere and jump onto their prey as it passes by. Now, they will pounce on these hard shelled prey items and will trap it with their arms. Then they will use their sharp parrot like beak to pierce a hole in their prey shell or exoskeleton. Then they will dribble venomous saliva into the wound, which will then paralyze the prey for the predatory octopus then to use its beak to tear off and eat the softer bits of the animal. The enzymes in its saliva will also partially digest the remaining flesh, which then the octopus can suck out of there like a yummy snack from the inside. Reports of this species also is that they will spray venom into the surrounding water to paralyze prey, but that's still a little bit under investigation. The venom of the blue ringed octopus uses symbiotic bacteria in blue ringed octopus salivary glands to produce the toxin. This substance is potentially neurotoxic, which means it attacks neurons versus just tissue, which means that it will block the transmission of nerve impulses. So it stops muscles from being able to contract and it has potentially deadly consequences. The venom itself is over 1,000 times more toxic than cyanide. Blue ring octopus also disperse these toxins throughout their body. If they are eaten by another animal, this venom then acts as a poison. Now, remember, there is a difference because poison is something that affects you through digestion or touch. So, like poison ivy, you touch it and then you can break out. Or poison, you eat a poisonous frog, you're going to be affected. But venom is used through injection and it gets into your bloodstream. So, most of the time, it's if an animal bites you, that's the only time that venom can really affect you. But the blue ringed octopus venom is one of those rare times where they are both venomous and poisonous, which is pretty unique and, I gotta say, really cool. Now, luckily, if you go swimming, all you have to do is watch where you step. They're not aggressive animals and they really don't want to waste their venom on you. And as long as you don't try and pick one up or step on it, you're gonna be good. Also, interestingly enough, in captivity, the greater blue ring octopus actually seems to lose its venomous capabilities. Still not really something you want to pick up in captivity, obviously, but researchers are trying to figure out why. This, however, by the way, an animal not being toxic in captivity is not something new and not necessarily a bad thing. Because, for example, poison dart frogs in captivity are not normally toxic because they get their toxins from poisonous ants that they eat who then the ants eat poisonous plants, and that's why they're toxic. So it's kind of poison down the lane to get to the poison dart frog. So because we're not feeding them toxic ants in captivity, they're not really that toxic, if at all. So it really may just be as simple as they aren't eating the right toxic animal in captivity to make them toxic. Though, even though they may not be toxic in captivity, they still have a lot of attributes that are pretty cool as well. For example, they are actually immune to venom of other blue ringed octopus or other pygmy octopus venom out there. So that's also why, even though they could eat each other, they don't try to because it's a little harder. They can't really use their venom on each other. They'd have to use brute strength, and they very much like to use their venom instead, especially since it helps with digestion. Also, because blue ring octopus really invest a lot of effort into their venom and camouflage, it's not too much of a shock that they actually have kind of lost their strong ability. I mean, they still can do it, but something that most people view with octopus is that they can ink when they get scared. But blue ringed octopus have evolved that they partially lose this defense or ability to ink. Now, when they're smaller and kind of juveniles, they can ink, but the ink sac itself greatly reduces in size as the octopus grows, which also kind of makes sense because you may need more ink when you're younger when the venom is not as effective. You're not very big even though they're not very big when they're full grown. So they need to rely maybe more on inking to kind of create a smoke screen, so to speak, to get away from any predators. But as they get larger, the toxins are stronger, which means that they need to invest more in room for the venom that they're trying to use, especially since they're using it to hunt and they can use it as defense, and they don't really need the ink glands as much. Speaking of younger, greater blue ringed octopus, let's talk about how two octopus become more octopus. So, when they breed, they can start breeding at about less than a year old. So, an interested male may hide away and wait for a female to swim by, very much like how he would hunt for prey. But in this case, he's looking for a girlfriend. And when one swims by, he will then typically pounce on her. And when he does so, he will land on the female and try to maneuver himself to the female's mantle cavity while holding on to her mantle. The mantle, by the way, and I think I might have said it earlier, sorry if I didn't describe it, is kind of like what you would consider the head slash body of the octopus, kind of that big bulbous head on top of their little arms. So that's what that is. And there's a cavity there. Now, when the male starts to maneuver there, initially, when the male pounces on her, the female may display her bright blue rings because, well, she's freaked out. Is this thing about to cannibalize her? Don't even know. He attacked me like he's about to eat me. And once he starts maneuvering to that mantle cavity, she will normally then relax because she's like, oh, I know what you're doing. This is okay. Once the male maneuvers correctly towards the female mantle cavity, he will then release his spermatophores into her mantle cavity, and bam, that's it, he's gone. But the female, however, shortly after mating, will go somewhere. She will lay 50 to 100 eggs, in which some studies have shown that the eggs themselves contain a little venom, most likely for protection. Now, the female broods the eggs under her mantle in a cluster on her arms for about 30 days. She usually does not eat during the brooding period. This puts a lot of stress on her body. But eventually, the eggs will hatch into 4 millimeter long planktonic paralarva. The larva will swim freely into the ocean for about a month, gaining weight. They will then settle onto the ocean floor where they will live out their lifespan, and of course, during that time, their weird little larva creatures will grow into full grown greater blue ringed octopus adults. And in about a year's time, themselves will go out and get side tackle from a male and create their own brood that will suck the life out of them. Because after normally octopus have their brood, they will die. It literally is just pure energy putting into this, and that is why they a lot of time only live for about a year because they become sexual mature about a year, and when they breed, boom, that's kind of it for her. But even though with a short life, their life is still very important to this world. So, speaking of that, let's find out how they're doing conservation wise. The greater blue ringed octopus, according to the IUCN Red List, is currently listed as least concern population trend unknown. So, the greater blue ringed octopus, according to the IUCN Red List, is doing okay, but they're not sure which way it's doing. When I dived more into it, the last assessment done on them was in 2014, and it seems that not so much was figured out about them during that time. They found enough that they would consider them least concern, but they had no idea which way the population trend was going. So I would say yes, probably least concern, but very much up in the air on what's actually going on, which not surprising. There's a ton of species of animals out there, and this is one organization that is trying to cover all its bases and is constantly trying to watch them. So all these species. So yeah, it's a big job. So not everything is going to be watched constantly, unfortunately. But anyway, let's talk about the conservation risks going on for the greater blue ringed octopus. Of course, global climate change. It's a major one. Shipping lanes tearing up the habitat they live in from turbulence from the water of ships passing through, as well as oil and gas that comes off of said ships, all being very destructive to our ocean. Losing habitat, of course, is a big one too. You got developers from hotels and other major businesses that are building right on to the ocean front. And then if it's, say, one of the rocky pools that the Blue Ring calls home, some of these developers, well, they don't want a rocky pool. They want an ocean beach side. So it is actually very common for businesses to literally ship in tons of sand to create these ideal beaches for their customers to be able to relax on, thus destroying the habitat that is initially supposed to be there. But there's two big issues I want to talk to you about today for the greater blue ringed octopus. One is coral bleaching, and the other is microplastics, which are things majorly affecting our sea creatures all around the world right now. But yeah, this is a big one for greater blue ringed octopus, and I will tell you why. First up, coral bleaching. The basics of what coral bleaching is, because you probably heard about it on the news or maybe on a nature show, but maybe you didn't quite understand it. You saw kind of this bleached looking coral, but might have not understood what actually happened there. I'll try and explain it now. Coral itself is actually a living organism. In fact, it's an organism made up of thousands of individual organisms called polyps. Now, these polyps create these structures we call coral. Now, within these structures, to gain food, the polyps have this relationship with symbiotic algae that will help provide food and nutrients to the polyps to continue to grow and survive and build these corals. And then, of course, they will provide shelter and ideal conditions for the algae. With me so far? Good. Well, when the coral or the polyps are stressed from, it could be a number of things: increased light, pollution, or what is the main cause happening right now? Rise in temperature, the coral will become stressed. When coral becomes stressed, the algae will leave the coral tissue because the environment is no longer a good one for the algae to hang around in. Okay, it's only a symbiotic relationship if both can benefit. If one's going down, the other one's not going to stay around and go down with it. Okay, so the algae leaves. And when it leaves, the coral becomes white because the algae itself is what help gives these different pigment colors to the coral. Now, at this point, the coral is not actually officially dead. Many coral can survive a small bleaching event, but due to the longer, hotter water days that is becoming a more regular thing, I mean, just look at right now, our temps all across the United States right now are hot, and which means the water right now is ridiculously hot, and it's staying hot, which means unfortunately there most likely will be a big coral die-off, because the last big one, in fact, was recorded in 2005 in the US, where we lost half of our corals due to a bleaching event around the Caribbean. And unfortunately, we were able to track it and possibly understand that this was due to warm waters. Because global climate change doesn't just affect the stuff on land with forest fires, major storms, all that sort of stuff. It also affects our oceans as well and is destroying our corals, which is a major habitat for thousands and thousands of animals like our greater blue ringed octopus. Now, the other big issue I want to talk to you about is microplastics. Something you may have also heard about, but maybe weren't quite sure what it was really talking about or where these microplastics were coming from. So, microplastics come from all the plastic trash we dumped into the ocean, waterways, even in your backyard. Okay. The plastic most likely can get to the ocean. There is more ocean than land. Even if you drop a plastic bottle in your backyard, there's a good chance eventually it'll end up in the ocean because most plastics will take hundreds and hundreds of years to eventually break down. A long time, which means it's just sitting there causing issues. And then that trash eventually gets into the ocean. And yes, you have the issues of birds eating bottle caps, turtles getting straws stuck in their noses, fish getting caught in can rings, all that sort of stuff, of course, is killing animals. But the new thing really coming out right now is these small microplastics, and they might be even more dangerous than all just the fully formed plastic. Because microplastic are small, barely visible pieces of larger pieces of plastic because they're normally coming from broken up pieces because even though they might not be breaking down, plastic will get ripped and destroyed by weather, or it may be starting to break down, but it's still plastic. It's just really, really small, almost invisible microplastic floating in the ocean. And it just gets smaller and smaller, but is still around. Also, another big one, plastic beads. If you use different types of soaps or cosmetic products that have exfoliators and they're using these little plastic beads in body wash and all that, that's getting washed down into the ocean and can't break down. And all of that is pretty much microplastic right off the bat because these tiny little plastics are getting breathed in by animals, eaten by others, and since they don't break down, a fish then can get eaten by another animal and pass those plastics along to that animal. And this can cause a variety of health problems. Obviously, eating plastic isn't good, and a buildup of plastic could block up things, as well as cause toxins from the plastic itself, as well as leaching chemicals that were on this plastic into the bodies. And it's actually becoming so bad that, like I said, if a fish eats it and another fish eats that fish, it'll suck up the microplastics. There is warnings about people right now that you should be careful about the seafood you're eating or eating too much seafood because that is a threat now to us. You yourself, when you eat fish from the ocean, run the risk of getting microplastics in you. So, yeah, it's a pretty major thing, even for us land animals. So, now that I got all the doom and gloom out, what can we do about this? Well, the first one is pretty much global climate change. If we could start reducing greenhouse gases, that would greatly reduce the warming of the earth and really help solve the coral bleaching problems. Because really, that is it. It's getting hotter because of global climate change, because of greenhouse gases, and that is causing more bleaching of coral. So, cutting greenhouse gases back with greener practices like cutting out fossil fuels, coal, and other such things, creating electricity and power for our world to rely on greener practices to reduce the greenhouse gases. Boom. There you go. Solved. But I will say I'm not blind to the fact that even though we really need to, we can't just flip a switch and go right to it. If we simply switch over immediately to greener practices, it would devastate the economy, ruin millions of people's jobs, and you can't not look at the human element when it comes to conservation. When you don't look at it, that's where you get to where we are now, where one side of the politics say we need to do it, other side says you're just trying to kill jobs and you're anti-business, and then you become at a stalemate and nothing gets done. So a lot of environmental activists are now toting, let's look into kind of those transition projects now that can help get us to these greener practices and give us a little more time because the way we're going right now, we can't just keep going like this. And the major things with transition projects is carbon capture, not so much reducing to zero right off the bat, but helping us reduce the overall carbon can be done through different methods. There are just carbon capture facilities, which are just these large facilities now that literally suck up the air and rip out the carbon from that air and then pump that carbon deep within the bedrock of the earth below it, which is exactly what trees and other plants do a lot of time. They push the carbon down into the soil. So it's an unnatural way that is based on how nature does it to capture carbon. Another way is from that news article. You had that lava rock that they discovered that as it rains onto these rocks, it bonds with the carbon that is in the rain droplets. So they were talking about throwing them in farmers' fields and kind of around different areas. And that as the rain came down, that is another way to capture carbon. And then those rocks would, get buried in the ground. And then lastly, another one, which I think I talked about maybe at the beginning of this podcast series, like episode 2 or 3, which are algae air filters, which is another interesting concept because algae itself, there are species that are 200 times more efficient in taking CO2 and changing it into oxygen than similar sized plants. So, for example, if you had the same biomass or weight of algae as a full grown oak tree, there are species that literally will be 200 times more efficient than that oak tree. Now, granted, there's a lot of more benefits than having trees than just the CO2 to oxygen transition, but these algae filters can be placed in cities, over overpasses, all that sort of stuff, over factories that are pumping the carbon right out, that they could create these filters to greatly reduce. And it would help us transition our economy, these facilities, and all this stuff, and give us way more time than if we just simply said it's either boom or bust. We either don't do it or we do it 100%. No, it's never going to work that way. And doing these carbon captures will help us get there and reduce the greenhouse gases and thus stop the coral bleaching. Now, moving on to the microplastics, cutting off plastics, obviously, big one. And of course, cleaning out our oceans of all the plastics that are already out there. Good ones. Okay, it's easy as that. Cut out plastics and clean up the plastics we already threw out into the ocean. Or if you see plastic on the side of the street, pick it up because there's a good chance it's going to end up in the ocean anyway. So pick it up, recycle it, boom. But we can get into a little more. So obviously, first step, if you have any of the plastic micro bead cosmetic things, please try and find alternatives to it, like charcoal or biodegradable plastic options. Basically, stop getting the micro bead cosmetics, please. Oh, and speaking of biodegradable plastics, yeah, that's not science fiction. It's out there. There's biodegradable cups and paper plates and utensils. It's all out there. You can even buy all of this on Amazon, okay? It is just as expensive as normal plastic stuff, but biodegradable. You can also get paper products or hemp products, all of which are super great. Now, I will admit that there's certain paper products that they try and suggest you to use versus using plastic that suck, like straws. I will admit I probably hate paper straws just as much as the rest of you. In fact, at my last facility, they used paper straws for their milkshakes, and yeah, it always just failed, okay? It got soggy, it fell apart, and I never could get my milkshake through those straws. But there's aluminum straws, glass straws, biodegradable, reusable straws. There's just so many options now, and they're just fantastic. And honestly, I'm only just really hitting the tip of the iceberg on all the different options that are out there now instead of using plastic. Okay, we are in a day and age where plastic is just not anywhere near as necessary as it used to be. I mean, for goodness sake, Lego is switching to all biodegradable pieces. So if your kids leave them outside or you step on a piece and accidentally kick it outside because your kids left it everywhere, you no longer have to worry because they're soon going to be biodegradable. And switching over to these reusable or biodegradable products are going to just help out the sea creatures so much more, including the amazing, squishy, venomous greater blue ringed octopus. And that's the show. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the amazing great blue ringed octopus. As always, make sure to check out my social media pages: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, of course. And if you don't have any social media or want to reach out in another way, you can always email me at ericlikesanimals@gmail.com. Also, don't forget, if you have any zoo or aquarium influencers you would like to be recognized, you can nominate them now for Blue Loop's Top Zoo and Aquarium Influencers list. A link to the nomination page will be down below in the episode footer till the time expires for it. So fun. But speaking of fun, our fun has now come to an end. Thank you once again for listening, and I'll see you all next time.